So here we go again. We have BioWare making some questionable decisions and causing quite a stir in the gaming community once again. This time, it's to do with some of the changes they've made on their recent reissue of the Mass Effect trilogy. It's a remaster, and it's a very lazy remaster, I might add. They haven't even created new textures. They've used AI upscaling to take the old textures and just bump them superficially. It's literally just the bare minimum. They've added lens flares though, so yeah, okay, big fucking whoop, right? But because this is new BioWare, you know how they are, they're one of the most woke devs in the entire industry, and they've decided that they need to fix some very problematic content that was present in the original Mass Effect trilogy. Chief of which being some of the camera angles from Mass Effect 2. Now, I don't know if you played ME2 in a while, but you might remember the character Miranda, a femme fatale working for Cerberus, who is constantly, she's flirting with you. She's genetically designed as the ultimate perfect woman or something, right? Like, that's her backstory. And the camera sometimes lingers on her ass, okay? Whoa, this is truly offensive to me, right? Like, I respect women, and virtual woman in a game where the camera lingers on her ass slightly just for, the mild titillation of the player. This is what is wrong with the industry. So they're taking it out, and they're like embarrassed that it was ever even included in the game. And devs and journos across the board are weighing in and considering the ass shots a relic of the old misogynist industry that we've obviously progressed so far beyond. And it's the bare minimum that BioWare could do is obviously make amends for this. And they're doing it in other ways too. Not only are they removing the ass shots, but they are making some characters canonically gay, removing their bisexual romance choices. And I could be wrong, but as far as I remember, the whole bisexual angle really only came in for Mass Effect 3 after BioWare started becoming more overtly politically correct. Aside from Liara, who, from a lore perspective, is obviously a member of a all-female race who are canonically hypersexualized, apparently. But I think Kaidan now is 100% gay. You cannot romance him as a female shepherd now. Because, wow, like that improves the game tenfold. It's called Remastered, but no, really, this is just Mass Effect Unnecessary Censorship Edition. And this entire shit show just reminded me of, okay, well, yeah, I played Mass Effect 1 and 2. I didn't even play 3 because of how shitty the ending appeared to be. I didn't want to get disappointed. And, I'm a big fan of sci-fi. I really like Star Trek Next Generation. And when Mass Effect 1 came out, it totally scratched that itch that I had for the kind of world building you get from good sci-fi. Lots of downtime, exploration. The gameplay itself was pretty ropey. But it was made up for it by the awesome dialogue choices, the solid cast of characters, and just the cool sci-fi aesthetic and the lore. It made me a huge fan of the first two games, and just watching this whole controversy play out now, it's making me think. The industry and the journos have such a bugaboo about female representation in video games. It's one of the biggest sources of butthurt that gaming has generated over the years. It's that once the third wave feminist contingent turned their Eye of Sauron onto the gaming industry back however many years, I talked about it in my last video, 10 years ago, they saw that the entire subculture of gaming was extremely vulnerable to attack using the representation of women angle. Because here's the thing, it's an industry created by men for men. And what do men like? Men like attractive women with big booba, right? That is genetically encoded into the history of gaming. And yet you look at it now, and it's been totally washed away after years of relentless feminist critique. And now we've been left with this very, very strange approach to female video game character design, right? Like, from Mass Effect Andromeda to Gears of War 5, it's like all female video game characters now must be hypermasculine or ugly or both. According to the standards of the modern video game industry, this is the consensus. And it seems strange to me that this is being mandated by feminists, but really all you're seeing is a total eradication of femininity in modern game design. It's simply being whitewashed in favor of this almost postmodern approach to female video game design, where it's like they don't want any of these designs to be enjoyed by men. So the characters themselves become a hostile statement against the player's own enjoyment. Like, look at a game like Control from Remedy. Cool idea for a game, but like the main character is just distractingly unattractive. Like, even the woman that they scanned, who's a real woman, for the main character of this game, is still way better looking than the actual final character design. And is this just the result of these devs being either pressured into or just outright choosing to hire open feminists to their team? And then, if there's one thing I've learned about feminists, it's that they hate pretty women more than they hate men in a lot of ways. It's like the idea that there's a hierarchy for human aesthetics drives them nuts because, in a way, they are basically gender communist in a way. It's that the third wave feminist ideology shares a lot of its ideological structure with, Marxism. I've talked about this before. I don't want to become a broken record freaking out about communism and Marxism, but you can see the same patterns. And with feminism, it's that, no, they believe that simply the fact that there is this preference, this male preference for a certain type of aesthetic when it comes to choosing mates, it drives them nuts. That the fact is their own nature and human nature, they have deemed to be extremely problematic. And I guess they want the state to intervene and to even out all of these just human inclinations to pursue a certain aesthetic. No, the state should intervene to force men to marry fat women and ugly-looking feminists because, you know what, like, they still want Chad, don't they? Like, even these women who claim to be feminists, still, at the end of the day, their standards are so high that for them, they really do believe they're entitled to a man on the top tier of the hierarchy, right? They want a piece of Chad. They want him to commit to them. And the fact that he's like, you know what, no, I actually would prefer something to my own taste because I have my own standards, that is the thing that drives them crazy. So when you're playing games or watching movies, and, the average man will watch an action film with, Arnold Schwarzenegger in it, and he doesn't become insanely jealous at the idea that, hey, this character is aesthetically far beyond my capabilities as just this lumpen prole. I'm sitting here just consuming the media. You look at that and you go, wow, that's actually kind of inspiring. I'd love to be in that kind of exceptional physical shape, right? That's cool. Maybe I'll get a gym membership. A woman sees a good-looking movie or video game character and a design that it's following in the line of the objective aesthetics of European beauty, right? And they go, fuck that bitch, and this woman only looks like this because of the systemic misogyny of the industry that created this product, and I have to become an activist against it because it's making me feel bad about myself, right? That seems to be the perspective of the modern feminist, and the feminist that consumes and critiques media. Anita Sarkeesian being one of the most, at this point it's a cliched example of the hostile feminist. She's had a lot of hot takes on characters like Bayonetta and stuff. And inexplicably, she's actually been let into the inner circle of video game design at this point. She was consulted on the female character design for The Last of Us Part 2. Unironically, that actually happened. And, look at the state of the female characters in Last of Us Part 2. There's almost a hostility to the idea that they should be feminine. Ellie, she's wearing like a fucking baggy shirt with jeans, and she just looks like this androgynous lump. And then you have, the other character, I forget her name, is the muscle girl? Abby, that's it. Her design is like the antithesis of femininity. It's actually hostile towards the idea of, the feminine, right? And it's like a postmodern statement in and of itself. She is this muscle-bound, violent, almost psychopathic monster. Now, this game was created and designed by literal feminists, and I couldn't think of anything more nightmarish than the design that you see for Abby. Who is that for? It's for literal ideologues, it is not for the average consumer. And if anything, it's an expression of hatred against the people who are supposed to be consuming, a game like Last of Us Part 2, as in just male gamers who make up the majority of the demographic of gamers. But that's what this new spin on female character design is about. It's a genuine fuck you to you and me. But hilariously, it kind of comes off as a self-own, where it's like these creators are genuinely hateful of femininity in its purest form. Even the concept that a woman should be a woman in a video game is now kind of, it's smeared, it's blurred. The lines have been completely blurred. And the industry never used to be like this. You know, you look at a character like Bayonetta, and she's considered problematic. I mean, Bayonetta is hyper-feminine. Like, that's the difference. But, you know, I mean, Bayonetta wasn't designed to be a realistic depiction of a woman. I mean, she was designed to be badass, and she's a supernatural being, okay? Look at the female character designs in, like, the Final Fantasy series, for instance. I always bring up FF, but I love FF. And, I mean, I'd be hard-pressed to find a really genuinely offensive depiction of a woman in the Final Fantasy series. You might get some booba here and there. There might be a few otaku tier, you know, panty shots. I can't quite remember. I don't think it's as bad as like a Kojima tier obsession with Coomer otaku baiting, but the thing is, it's that in these traditional games that we've grown up with, it actually has a accurate archetypal representation of the masculine and the feminine, okay? And it doesn't have to be oppressive or mean-spirited or misogynistic, quote-unquote. It's just the natural depiction, right? Like, and it makes sense, and that's why we enjoy a lot of these properties, even when certain characteristics are exaggerated, like in the case of Bayonetta, but you could also look at, you know, ultra-buff heroes of gaming, too. It's the same thing for the masculine, but as I said before, there's a difference. Men find it inspiring, women hate the idea that there's a hierarchy. And you can take it all the way back to the dawn of gaming. I mean, look at Super Mario, okay? Now, his entire journey is archetypal. It is the hero's journey, right? He's a humble plumber, and he's called to adventure because his waifu is kidnapped by a fucking dragon, right? So what does he do? He goes off on this adventure, and against all odds, he rescues the princess, and that is his reward for undertaking such a perilous journey. And that story speaks to human beings, especially men, on a deep level. It's the oldest story we have, and it's the story of men and women. Now, feminists, obviously being postmodernists, absolutely hate the idea of this story. It makes them seethe because it genuinely is proof that there is a natural order. And unfortunately, equality in the natural world is simply untenable. In fact, the very concept of forcing equality onto nature is in and of itself kind of a satanic, materialist canard. You could also call it, I mean, Luciferian. It's just this concept that, no, the natural realm is, we need to dominate it and control it and ultimately invert it. And that's what we're seeing all over the place throughout our modern culture and our arts. I mean, the modern explosion of the transgender movement is just one symptom of this overall attack on our archetypal traditional notions of the masculine and the feminine. And I'm sure the elites are loving this because, I mean, for them, we simply are not supposed to know our own nature. And all of our heroes now have to be this gender-smeared, inverted parody of the traditional archetypes. And I also hear all the time women complaining that all games just simply represent the same thing. It's this masculine power fantasy that marginalizes women as the damsel in distress, and it's so unfair. Sorry, ladies, but that is our story, as in men. That's our story. You have a story too, but it's very different. And it's the story of being a woman so high value, so desirable, that you have the power to inspire a hero to go on that journey and to prove to you he is the highest value male and his genes are deserving of propagation. And I guess the reason why feminists absolutely hate this story, which is unfortunately built into every single woman, right? It's the aspirational. Why do women wear makeup? Why do women obsess over making themselves more desirable, even if they don't admit it? Well, because there's this drive embedded into their entire psychology that echoes this archetypal narrative. And feminists, unfortunately, they get butthurt about this because I think deep down they know by going against their own nature and by vilifying men, they're automatically making themselves undesirable. And by being undesirable, you're not going to get the Chad. Like, Chad is not going to go slay the dragon on your behalf if you're a toxic, awful cunt feminist. And that is just the way it goes. And they are very, very bitter, probably on a subconscious level, about this reality. And in my opinion, that's why they exhibit this contempt for the male feminist, the beta male, the soy boy, if you will. And hilariously, I mean, a low-tier, low-status man will lower the status of the woman that he's with, right? Because she must not be that desirable if the best she can do is hang around with some, bug man. And even with all their rhetoric about equality and the dismantling of gender norms, they are still physically repulsed by low-value men. It's all bullshit because at the end of the day, they still want the prince. They still want a top-tier Chad. And instead of changing their behavior and maybe going, maybe I should make myself more desirable, no. They decide that they want to destroy themselves and the system out of spite. And unfortunately, when I say the system, I'm not just talking about our current system of our society. They hate the system as in nature. They hate their own nature and they hate natural law. Literal witches. It's these kind of women and their beta male simpy enablers that have completely trashed this industry, because now character design is now a political statement. It's no longer even about making sense aesthetically or creating characters that are cool and attractive and that you want to interact with and embody. As far as I'm concerned, the assassination of Miranda's ass is just the tip of the iceberg.